The Galactic Council chamber was the largest room Park had ever seen. It stretched for almost a kilometer in every direction, with seats rising up like mountains on all sides. Each seat held a delegate from a different species, and there were thousands of them. Some had scales, some had fur, some floated in tanks of strange liquid, some were made of light itself. Stood alone on the human platform. It was a small circle of metal floating in the center of the chamber. Behind her, a single hologram showed Earth spinning slowly in the darkness of space. Blue oceans, green lands, white clouds, home. She was 42 years old, trained in diplomacy at Seoul National University. She had spent 20 years learning how to smile at creatures that wanted to eat her, shake hands with beings that had no hands, and find common ground with minds that thought in ways humans could barely understand. But nothing had prepared her for today. High Arbiter floated to the central speaking platform. Which meant he looked something like a jellyfish crossed with a spider. His body was transparent, filled with glowing blue liquid that pulsed when he spoke. Long tendrils hung from his form, each one tipped with a different sensory organ. They had ruled the Galactic Council for 6,000 years. They did not like change. They especially did not like humans. "The vote is complete," announced. His voice came through the universal translator as cold and formal. 37 species have agreed, 0 have opposed. The resolution passes unanimously. Kept her face still. She had expected this. Humanity's intelligence service had warned her 3 days ago, but expecting a punch did not make it hurt less. Tendrils spread wide as he read the decree. The species known as humans have violated the standardization accords by developing technologies without hegemony approval. They have established research facilities outside council oversight. They have created weapons, medical treatments, and transportation systems that have not been registered with the Technology Control Bureau. The chamber hummed with approval. They who looked like giant insects clicked their mandibles together. They who resembled floating balls of light pulsed in agreement. Species that had been traveling between stars when humans were still learning to make fire nodded their various heads. Therefore, continued, humanity is given 60 standard cycles to comply with the following demands. First, all independent research facilities must be closed. Second, all unregistered technologies must be surrendered for hegemony review. Third, human scientists must submit to council oversight for all future projects. Fourth, humanity must pay reparations for violations already committed. He paused, and his blue glow brightened with satisfaction. If humanity fails to comply, they will face complete economic isolation. All trade will stop. All shipping lanes will be closed to human vessels. All banking connections will be severed. All fuel depots will refuse service to human ships. Did the math in her head. Humanity had spread to 47 worlds. Most of those worlds depended on galactic trade for food, medicine, and fuel. Without trade, millions would suffer. Without fuel, colonies would go dark. Without medicine, diseases that were easily cured would become death sentences. Everyone knew this, that was the point. You have 60 cycles, said, looking directly at. Submit to the Council's authority, or watch your species die alone in the dark between stars. The chamber waited. Every eye, sensor, and perception organ focused on the small human woman standing on her tiny platform. They expected begging. They expected tears. They expected the desperate promises of a weak species that had risen too fast and reached too far. Touched her earpiece. Soul, did you receive all of that? A voice came back, calm and clear. It belonged to Director, Head of Earth Strategic Response Division. We received it, Ambassador. Our response is ready. Understood. Lowered her hand. She looked at the thousands of delegates watching her. She thought about her grandmother who had survived the Korean War. She thought about her mother who had built a business from nothing during the economic crisis. She thought about all the humans who had faced impossible odds and refused to break. Then she smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was not a scared smile. It was the smile of someone who knew something that no one else in the room understood. She bowed once in the Korean way, deep and formal. Then she turned and walked off the platform without saying a single word. The chamber exploded with noise. Delegates shouted questions. Tendrils whipped through the air in confusion. The made sounds that the translator could not process. The flickered so fast they almost went invisible. Ambassador Park called out, "You have not responded to the Council's demands." Did not turn around. She did not slow down. She walked through the massive doors of the chamber and kept walking until she reached the human shuttle bay. Her aide, Lieutenant Myra, was waiting by the ship. Myra was young, only 26, but she had the steady nerves of someone twice her age. "Ambassador, the Council is demanding you return." "Let them demand. They're saying your silence is an act of war." Stopped at the shuttle's door. She looked back at the massive council building, all glass and metal and ancient alien architecture. "Silence is not war, Lieutenant. Silence is just silence. They wanted an answer. We gave them one." "We gave them nothing." "Exactly." They boarded the shuttle. As it lifted off from the station, could see the council's communication lights blinking urgently. Hundreds of messages were coming in. Threats, demands, questions, offers of last-minute negotiation. She turned off the display. "Set course for Earth," she said. "Maximum speed." Myra hesitated. "Ambassador, are you sure about this? The sanctions will begin immediately. Our colonies will suffer. People will die." Closed her eyes. She could see her grandmother's face, weathered and strong. She could hear her voice speaking in Korean, the language of her childhood. "When the strong try to crush you, you have two choices. You can bend until you break, or you can stand still and let them discover that you are not as weak as they believed." "We are not weak," said softly. "We have never been weak. We were just polite. We shared our inventions because we believed in cooperation. We followed their rules because we wanted peace, but they mistook kindness for submission." She opened her eyes. "Now we will show them the difference." Back on the council station, High Arbiter called an emergency meeting with his advisors. They had expected many responses from the humans: anger, fear, negotiation, perhaps even violence. They had prepared for all of these. They had not prepared for nothing. "What does it mean?" asked Trade Minister, a young barely 200 years old. "It means they are foolish," said. "They think silence will change our minds. It will not. The sanctions begin tomorrow." "But what if they actually stay silent? What if they don't come back to negotiate?" Made a sound like bubbling water, the equivalent of laughter. "They will come back. They have no choice. Their species is young. Their technology depends on our fuel. Their colonies depend on our food shipments. Within 1 month their people will be starving. Their leaders will come crawling back, begging for mercy." He spread his tendrils wide, glowing with confidence. "The humans have made a mistake, and they will pay for it." Far away, traveling at maximum speed toward a small blue planet, Ambassador Park sat in the darkness of her cabin and smiled that same knowing smile. The galaxy thought silence was surrender. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Trade Minister had not slept in 3 days. He stood in the command center of Earth's Economic Defense Bureau, watching numbers fall like rain on 100 different screens. Red numbers, falling numbers, numbers that represented jobs lost, ships stranded, and families wondering where their next meal would come from. The sanctions had begun exactly as promised. Every human shipping lane went dark on the first day. Fuel stations across the galaxy put up signs that read "No service to human vessels" in 100 different languages. Banks froze human accounts. Trade ports closed their doors. In one coordinated moment, the entire galactic economy had turned its back on humanity. "How bad is it?" asked Lieutenant Myra, who had been assigned to his office after returning with the ambassador, pulled up a summary on his personal display. Colony on 442b is down to 2 months of food. Mining operations on have stopped completely because they can't get fuel. The hospital ship Mercy of Soul is stuck in the outer territories with 300 patients and no way to get medicine. Can we help them? We're trying, but without access to galactic shipping lanes, everything takes 10 times longer. He rubbed his eyes. The Council designed these sanctions to hurt. They're doing their job. Myra looked at the screens, her young face troubled. Sir, I have to ask, why aren't we negotiating? Ambassador Park just walked out. We haven't sent a single message since. People are suffering. Turned to face her. He was 53 years old, a veteran of 3 economic crises and 2 trade wars. He had gray in his hair and lines on his face that told stories of sleepless nights and impossible decisions. But his eyes were calm. Do you know what the Council expects us to do right now? Beg for mercy. Exactly. They expect us to panic. They expect our leaders to fight among themselves. They expect our people to riot in the streets demanding that we give in. He gestured at the screens. They've done this before to other species. They held out for 3 weeks before they surrendered. The lasted 2 months. The longest any species has resisted was and they broke after 100 days. How long do we plan to resist? Smiled. It was a tired smile, but there was iron behind it. Lieutenant, we don't plan to resist. Resistance implies that we're waiting for them to win. We're not waiting for anything. We're building. He walked to a different section of the command center, where a smaller group of officers monitored different screens. These screens showed factories, laboratories, and shipyards. They showed scientists working through the night and engineers solving problems that should have taken years to solve. The Council thinks we depend on them, said. And they're right partially. We do use their fuel, their shipping lanes, their banking systems, but they made a mistake. They assumed that because we used their systems, we couldn't build our own. He pointed to a screen showing a massive facility in the mountains of Korea. This is the Advanced Propulsion Laboratory. Chief Engineer has been working there for 15 years on a new type of engine. The Council never knew about it because we never told them. It wasn't secret exactly. We just didn't share everything. What kind of engine? The kind that doesn't need their fuel. Myra's eyes widened. That's impossible. Every ship in the galaxy uses fuel cells. It's the only thing that works for faster-than-light travel. It was the only thing, past tense. Allowed himself a small moment of pride. Humans are good at being told something is impossible and then doing it anyway. Chief Engineer has been saying for years that there must be another way. Now she's proving it. The door to the command center opened and Director walked in. He was the head of Earth Strategic Response Division, the man who had told Ambassador Park to stay silent. He was 60 years old, tall and thin, with the posture of a soldier and the mind of a chess master. Status report, he said, not bothering with greetings. Straightened. Economic damage is severe but manageable. We've activated emergency food reserves for all colonies. Fuel rationing begins tomorrow. The hospital ship Mercy of Soul is being through back channels. Back channels. Not everyone in the galaxy agrees with the sanctions, Director. Some species are quietly helping us. They're afraid of the Council, so they won't do it openly. But a fuel cell here, a food shipment there. It adds up. Nodded. Good. What about the other project? Chief Engineer reports the prototype will be ready in 4 months. Maybe 3 if she pushes her team. Push them? We need that engine. Myra spoke up, unable to contain her curiosity. Sir, I understand the plan is to become independent from the galactic economy, but even if we succeed, won't the Council just attack us? They have thousands of warships. We have maybe 200. Looked at her with something that might have been approval. Good question, Lieutenant. The answer is no. The Council will not attack us because the Council has never attacked anyone. They don't need to. Economic pressure has always worked. Every species in the galaxy depends on the Council's trade networks. When the Council says submit or starve, species submit. But if we don't starve, then they have no leverage. Their entire power structure is built on economic control. Take that away, and they're just a collection of species who happen to have big buildings and fancy titles. He walked to the main display and looked at the map of human space. 47 worlds, scattered across a small corner of the galaxy. The Council has ruled for 6,000 years because no one has ever called their bluff. We're calling it. And if we're wrong, if our people can't hold out long enough. Was silent for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft. Then we will have failed, and our children will grow up in a galaxy where humans are servants, not partners, where our scientists need permission to think, where our artists need approval to create, where everything that makes us human is controlled by species who fear what we might become. He turned to face her. I would rather watch our civilization fall than see that happen, and I believe most humans feel the same way. The room was quiet. On the screens, the red numbers continued to fall. Somewhere in the galaxy, human families were going hungry. Human ships were floating dead in space. Human dreams were being crushed under the weight of an entire civilization's disapproval. But in laboratories across Earth, scientists worked through the night. In factories on colony worlds, engineers built new machines. In schools, children learned about the history of their species, about all the times humans had faced impossible odds and won. Myra thought about her own grandmother, who had grown up during a time when Korea was divided and poor. She had told stories of eating rice mixed with barley because there wasn't enough food, of walking miles to school in worn-out shoes, of building a nation from the ashes of war through nothing but hard work and stubborn hope. My grandmother used to say something, Myra said slowly. She said that the worst thing you can do to a Korean is tell them they can't do something. It makes them want to do it more. Laughed, a real laugh that cut through the tension in the room. Your grandmother was a wise woman, Lieutenant. She also said that patience is a weapon. The enemy who waits often wins against the enemy who rushes. Nodded, then we wait, we build, and we stay silent. For how long? For as long as it takes. Outside the command center, the sun was setting over Seoul. The city lights were coming on, millions of windows glowing in the darkness. Somewhere up there, past the atmosphere and the satellites and the distant stars, the Galactic Council was waiting for humanity to break. They would wait a very long time. Across human space, a quiet message spread through unofficial channels. It wasn't a speech or a broadcast. It was just a simple phrase passed from person to person, colony to colony, ship to ship. Hold the line. And humanity held. The first crack appeared on the 3 months after the sanctions began. Chief Technician stood in the central atmospheric control station, watching the air recyclers fail one by one. The machines were old, built centuries ago, but they had been upgraded with human technology during the Great Cooperation period. Human engineers had made them efficient, reliable, and clean. They had also made them complicated. The tertiary filter is failing, reported Technician, clicking his mandibles nervously. Same problem as the others. The calibration is off by 3%. Then recalibrate it, ordered. I don't know how. The manual says to use creative problem-solving to adjust for local atmospheric variations. Held up the human-written maintenance guide. What does that mean? What is creative problem-solving? Stared at the manual. He had read it 100 times in the past week. The words made no sense. Human engineers seem to expect that anyone reading their manuals would simply figure things out. They left gaps in their instructions, assuming that the reader would fill them with their own ideas. They did not have their own ideas. They had optimized away original thinking 10,000 years ago. Their society ran on perfect efficiency, on doing things exactly the way they had always been done. It was why they had survived so long. It was also why they were now watching their atmospheric processors fail. "Contact the Council," said finally. "Request human technical assistance. The humans are under sanctions. They won't respond." Then request that the Council force them to respond. Clicked doubtfully but sent the message. The response came back within an hour from the office of High Arbiter himself. "Human assistance is not available. They are advised to solve their own problems." Read the message 3 times. Solve their own problems. As if it were that simple. As if 10,000 years of cultural evolution could be undone in an afternoon. He looked at the failing machines and felt something he had never felt before: fear. Far across the galaxy, the medical collective faced a different kind of crisis. Elder floated in the center of the emergency chamber, her light body pulsing with distress. On the displays around her, images showed the outer colonies. Images of citizens, their lights flickering weakly. Images of medical ships, sitting useless in docks because they had no human doctors on board. "The plague spreads faster than we predicted," reported Medical Director. "At current rates, we will lose 30% of the outer territory population within 6 months. What about our own doctors?" "They are trying, Elder, but the plague attacks our neural light patterns. Human medicine worked because humans think differently. They saw connections we could not see. They tried treatments we would never have considered." Remembered the human doctors who had worked in hospitals. Strange creatures, solid and heavy, trapped in bodies of meat and bone. They had seemed so primitive at first, but they had saved millions of lives with their strange ideas and stranger medicines. Now they were gone. "We must negotiate with the humans," declared. "The Council forbids it. Any species that breaks the sanctions will face the same punishment." "Then we will speak to the Council. We will demand that they end this foolishness." Director's light dimmed with doubt. "The Council will not listen. High Arbiter has made this personal. He believes the humans must be taught a lesson." "A lesson? Our people are dying." "I know, Elders, I know." The emergency meeting of the Galactic Council was the largest in 300 years. Representatives from 200 species crowded into the chamber, all of them shouting, flashing, clicking, or humming their complaints. High Arbiter floated at the center, his tendrils pulled tight against his body in a defensive posture. He had not expected this. The sanctions were supposed to break the humans, not cause problems for everyone else. "The atmospheric systems are failing," shouted Ambassador. "We need human engineers." "The plague is spreading," cried Elder. "We need human doctors." "Our banking software has crashed," announced the Trade Minister. "Human programmers built it and we cannot fix it." "Our translation systems are breaking down," added the representative. 60% of galactic communication runs on human-designed language algorithms." Raised his tendrils for silence. It took several minutes for the chamber to quiet. "These are temporary difficulties," he said, trying to project confidence. "The humans will surrender soon. When they do, everything will return to normal." "When?" demanded. "It has been 3 months. They have not sent a single message. They have not made a single request. It is as if they have forgotten we exist." "They are suffering. Their colonies are starving. Their ships are stranded. They cannot hold out much longer." "Can they not?" A new voice cut through the chamber, cold and analytical. It belonged to Observer, the Council's chief intelligence analyst. He was a small creature, barely visible, with eyes that saw everything and a mind that forgot nothing. "What do you mean?" asked, his glow flickering with unease. Floated forward. "I have been monitoring human space. The situation is unexpected." "Unexpected how?" "They are not collapsing. They are adapting." Projected images into the center of the chamber. Human colonies have begun growing their own food using techniques we have never seen before. Human ships are being refitted with new engines that do not require our fuel. Human factories are producing goods that match or exceed galactic standards. The chamber fell silent. "That is impossible," said. "They cannot develop new technologies without access to our resources." And yet they are. Zoomed in on one image. It showed a massive facility in the mountains of a blue and green planet. This is the Human Advanced Propulsion Laboratory. They have been working in secret for years on a new type of engine. Our sources indicate they are very close to completion. What kind of engine? One that does not need fuel cells. The silence that followed was absolute. Fuel cells were the foundation of the galactic economy. Every ship, every station, every colony depended on them. They controlled the fuel supply, and through that control, they controlled everything. If the humans had found another way. "This changes nothing," said quickly. "Even if they develop new technology, they are still isolated. They cannot trade. They cannot expand. They will eventually have to negotiate." "Will they?" asked. "High Arbiter, the humans have done something no species has ever done before. They have accepted our sanctions without protest. They have not begged, they have not threatened, they have simply worked. Worked. In silence, for 3 months they have been building, creating, inventing. While we waited for them to break, they were becoming stronger." Turned to face the assembled delegates. "I believe we have made a serious mistake. We assumed the humans needed us. We may have been wrong." Elder spoke into the silence. "What do we do now?" No one had an answer. In the mountains of Korea, Chief Engineer stood before the completed prototype. The drive, named after her mentor who had died believing it was possible, hummed with power. It was beautiful in its simplicity. A cylinder of crystalline material wrapped in magnetic coils, connected to a reactor that burned hydrogen instead of alien fuel. Director stood beside her. "Does it work?" "We'll know in an hour. Commodore Shin is ready to make the first test flight." "And if it succeeds?" Smiled. It was a tired smile, earned through months of sleepless nights and impossible deadlines. "Then we don't need them anymore. Any of them." She looked up at the stars through the laboratory's glass ceiling. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was waiting for humanity to fail. They were about to be very disappointed. The drive worked. Commodore Shin felt the ship shudder around her as the new engine activated. The stars outside the viewport stretched into long lines of light, then snapped back into focus. In the space of a heartbeat, the test vessel Sunrise had traveled from Earth orbit to the edge of the solar system. "Distance confirmed," reported Navigation Officer. "We are now past Neptune's orbit. Travel time 4 seconds." 4 seconds. A journey that would have taken days with conventional engines. A journey that would have been impossible without fuel. Allowed herself a small smile. She was 51 years old, a veteran of the colonial expansion era, and she had spent her entire career flying ships that depended on alien technology. Now she was flying something purely human. "Run full diagnostics," she ordered. "I want to make sure this wasn't a one-time miracle." It wasn't. They ran the test 12 more times, jumping to different points in the solar system. Each time, the drive performed perfectly. The ship's reactor ran on hydrogen, the most common element in the universe. They would never need fuel again. "Send word to Earth," said finally. "Operation New Dawn is a success." The message reached Director 20 minutes later. He read it 3 times, then walked out of his office and stood in the courtyard of the Strategic Response Division headquarters. The sun was setting over Seoul, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. He looked up at the stars beginning to appear overhead and smiled. "We did it," he said to no one in particular. "We actually did it." The announcement came 1 week later, broadcast on every human channel across 47 worlds. Chief Engineer stood before the cameras, holding a model of the drive in her hands. She looked tired but proud. 6 months ago, the Galactic Council told us we were nothing without them, she said. They told us to submit or starve. They believed that we depended on their technology, their fuel, their permission to exist. She held up the model. This is our answer. The drive uses hydrogen fuel available anywhere in the universe. It is faster than anything the Council has ever built, and it is ours. She paused, looking directly into the camera. We don't need your fuel anymore. We don't need your shipping lanes. We don't need your permission. We are not asking for the sanctions to be lifted. We are not negotiating. We are simply moving forward with or without you. The broadcast spread through the galaxy like a shockwave. Within hours, every species knew. Within days, the galactic economy began to collapse. High Arbiter called an emergency session, but it was already too late. The fuel market crashed overnight. Species that had invested their entire economies in fuel production found themselves suddenly worthless. Trade networks that had existed began to fall apart. This is economic warfare, screamed at the emergency council meeting. His tendrils whipped through the air, glowing red with fury. The humans have attacked us without firing a single shot. Diplomatic Han appeared on the council's holographic display. It was the first official human communication since Ambassador Park had walked out 9 months ago. Was younger than Park, only 35, but she had the same calm expression and the same iron in her voice. Economic warfare, she said. High Arbiter, we did nothing to you. You sanctioned us. You told us to submit or starve. We chose a third option. We chose to survive without you. You knew this would destroy our economy. We knew nothing of the sort. We simply built technology that met our own needs. If that technology happens to make your fuel worthless, that is not our fault. You built an economy that depended on controlling others. We built an economy that depends only on ourselves. His glow flickered between red and blue, a sign of extreme emotional distress. What do you want? Reparations, territory, an apology. Shook her head. We want nothing from you, that is the point. For years we shared everything with the galaxy, our inventions, our medicines, our ideas. We did this freely because we believed in cooperation. You responded by demanding control over our thoughts. You wanted to own our creativity. We wanted to ensure safety. Your technology was advancing too fast. Our technology was advancing because that is what humans do. We solve problems. We create new things. We do not ask permission to think. Leaned forward. You tried to put chains on our minds, so we stopped sharing. We stopped participating. We stopped caring what you thought of us. And now we are leaving. Not physically, but economically. We have found new trade partners among species who were too afraid to oppose you openly. We have established new shipping lanes using our new drives. We have built a new network that does not include the Council. The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted, demanded answers, accused each other of secret deals with the humans. Through it all, floated in stunned silence, watching his 6,000 years of dominance crumble. In the months that followed, the defections began. They came first, desperate for help with their failing atmospheric systems. They sent a secret message to Earth, begging for engineers. The response came from Captain Park, who had been promoted after her famous walkout. We will help you, she told the ambassador, but not as servants, as partners, equal partners. They agreed. Within weeks, human engineers were on there, teaching them something they had forgotten long ago, how to think for themselves. The followed, their plague growing worse by the day. Human doctors arrived with new treatments, developed during the months of isolation. They asked for nothing in return except friendship. Why do you help us? Elder asked Dr. Moon, the chief medical officer of the relief mission. We voted for the sanctions. We wanted to punish you. Dr. Moon smiled as she prepared a treatment for a sick child. Because helping people is what humans do. We were angry at the council, not at individual species. Most of you were just following orders. We don't punish people for being afraid. The council punishes fear with death. We are not the council. One by one, species began to leave the Galactic Council's economic network. Some did it openly, declaring their support for the new human cooperative. Others did it quietly, maintaining official loyalty while secretly trading through back channels. The Council's power, built over thousands of years, melted away like ice in summer. Admiral Lee commanded the growing human fleet from his flagship, the Eternal Soul. They did not fight. They did not threaten. They simply existed, a constant reminder that humanity could not be controlled. "The Council is falling apart," reported his intelligence officer. "Our sources say has lost the support of most member species. There are talks of replacing him." "Let them talk," said. "We're not interested in revenge. We just want to be left alone." "Sir, some species are asking if we plan to take over. They're afraid we're going to become the new council." Laughed a genuine laugh that surprised his crew. "Take over? Why would we want to run the galaxy? We just want to explore it." He looked out at the stars. Countless points of light representing countless worlds, countless species, countless mysteries waiting to be discovered. "Tell anyone who asks, we're not building an empire, we're building a community. No one controls it, no one owns it. Everyone is welcome as long as they treat others with respect." He turned back to his crew. "That's all we ever wanted, and now, finally, we're going to have it." On Earth, in a small apartment in Seoul, former Ambassador Park sat by her window and watched the ships rising into the sky. Each one carried humans to new worlds, new adventures, new possibilities. Each one was powered by human ingenuity and human stubbornness, and human refusal to be told what they could not do. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. "When they try to crush you, stand still. Let them discover you are stronger than they believed." Raised her teacup to the stars. "We stood still, grandmother, and now we are free." 50 years had passed since the day Ambassador Park walked out of the Galactic Council chamber in silence. 50 years of change, of growth, of a galaxy slowly learning to see humanity with new eyes. The old council chamber still existed, but it felt like a museum now. Half the seats were empty, their delegations having left to join the human cooperative or simply faded into irrelevance. The walls that had once glowed with the symbols of 37 mighty species now seemed dull and tired. High Arbiter still floated at the center, but his light had dimmed with age and failure. His tendrils hung limp at his sides. The confidence that had once radiated from every part of his body was gone, replaced by something that looked very much like defeat. Ambassador Shin entered the chamber alone. She was the granddaughter of Commodore Shin, who had commanded the first drive test flight. She was also the great-niece of Admiral Lee, who had built the human fleet that now patrolled the galaxy's trade lanes. The blood of pioneers ran in her veins. She was 32 years old, young by any species standards, but she had inherited her family's talent for calm in the face of chaos. She walked to the human platform, the same platform where Ambassador Park had stood half a century ago, and waited. Spoke first. His voice came through the translator as tired and hollow. "You asked for this meeting, Ambassador. What do you want?" Looked at him with something that might have been pity. "I wanted to see you, High Arbiter, to see what became of the being who tried to destroy my species." "I did not try to destroy you. I tried to control you. There is a difference." "Is there? You threatened to starve our colonies. You planned to cut us off from everything we needed to survive. If we had been weaker, millions would have died." Tendrils twitched. "You were not weaker, that was our mistake." "Yes, it was." Silence filled the chamber. The few remaining delegates watched with mixed expressions. Some showed fear. Some showed hope. Some showed nothing at all, their emotions impossible to read. "What happens now?" asked. You have one. The council is finished. The human cooperative controls more trade than we ever did. Your ships travel faster than light itself. Your doctors cure diseases we cannot even name. Your engineers build wonders we cannot understand. He spread his tendrils in a gesture of surrender. So tell me, Ambassador, what happens to those of us who remain? Will you punish us? Will you take revenge for what we did to you? Was quiet for a long moment. She thought about her grandmother's stories, about the months of hardship when human colonies went hungry. She thought about the families who lost loved ones during the Sanctions, the ships that were stranded, the dreams that were crushed. Part of her wanted to say yes. Part of her wanted to make them suffer as humanity had suffered. But that was not the human way, not anymore. We do not want revenge, she said finally. We never wanted revenge. All we ever wanted was to be treated as equals, to share our ideas freely, to explore the universe without asking permission. You have that now. Yes, we do. She stepped forward closer to his platform. But we also have something else. We have the chance to build something better than what existed before, not a council that controls through fear, not an empire that demands submission, something new. What do you propose? Raised her hand, and a hologram appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed a map of the galaxy, but not the old map with its rigid boundaries and controlled zones. This map was alive with movement, with ships traveling in all directions, with trade routes connecting species that had never met before. The human cooperative is not an organization, explained. It is an idea. The idea that species can work together without one species controlling the others. The idea that sharing knowledge makes everyone stronger. The idea that diversity is not a weakness to be eliminated, but a strength to be celebrated. She looked at him. You tried to make us small because you were afraid of what we might become. But humans are not meant to be small. Neither is any other species. We all have something to offer. We all have something to teach. The only question is whether we have the courage to learn. Was silent for a long time. The other delegates watched, waiting. You would welcome us, he asked finally, after everything we did. We would welcome anyone who is willing to change. Anyone who is willing to see other species as partners, not subjects. Anyone who is willing to let go of control and embrace cooperation. She smiled, and it was the same smile that Ambassador Park had shown 50 years ago. The smile that said she knew something no one else in the room understood. The choice is yours, High Arbiter. You can spend the rest of your days clinging to the ruins of what you built, or you can join us in building something new. Looked around the chamber at the empty seats, the fading lights, the symbols of power that no longer meant anything. He remembered the days when the council ruled the galaxy, when his word was law, when species bowed before the might of the hegemony. Those days were gone. They would never come back. Very well, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Show us this new way. The news spread across the galaxy within hours. The Galactic Council had officially dissolved. High Arbiter had resigned his position and accepted an advisory role in the human cooperative. The species that remained in the council joined as equal partners in the new order. There was no war, no invasion, no conquest, just a quiet ending and a new beginning. 100 years after the Sanctions began, the galaxy was almost unrecognizable. Human ships carried medicine to worlds that had once tried to destroy them. Human universities welcomed students from 1,000 species. Human explorers pressed into unknown space, always curious, always reaching further, always asking, what if? They had learned to think creatively. Their atmospheric systems now ran better than ever, designed by a new generation of engineers who combined efficiency with human imagination. They had conquered the plague that once threatened their existence. Their doctors worked alongside human colleagues, developing treatments for diseases that affected species across the galaxy. Even they had found their place. They no longer controlled the fuel supply, but they had discovered something better. They had become teachers, sharing the wisdom of their 6,000 years of history with younger species eager to learn. In schools across the galaxy, young beings learned the story of how humanity faced the galaxy's combined might and responded with nothing but silence, stubbornness, and the absolute refusal to be anything less than themselves. Why didn't they fight? A young student asked his human teacher. They had every reason to be angry. They could have built weapons. They could have attacked. The teacher, a woman named, smiled. She was the granddaughter of Chief Engineer, the inventor of the drive. Because fighting wasn't the point, she said. Winning wasn't the point. The point was to show the galaxy who we really were. And who were you? We were a species that didn't need permission to dream. A species that turned silence into strength. A species that answered hatred with creation and fear with hope. She looked out the window at the stars, where human ships moved alongside vessels from 100 different species, all traveling together toward the unknown. Some called it luck, she said. Others called it spite, but we just called it being human. The student thought about this for a long moment. Then he clicked his mandibles in what passed for a smile. I think I understand. When they tried to crush you, you didn't break. You just grew. Yes, said, we grew, and now everyone can grow with us. In a small apartment in Seoul, a very old woman sat by her window and watched the ships rising into the sky. Park, the great-granddaughter of Ambassador Park, was 93 years old now. Her hands trembled and her eyes were dim, but her mind was still sharp. On her desk sat a small hologram of her great-grandmother, frozen in the moment she turned and walked out of the Galactic Council chamber. Silent, proud, unbroken. You would be happy with how things turned out, said to the hologram. You taught us that silence can be louder than any words, that patience can be stronger than any weapon, that being human means never giving up, even when the entire galaxy wants you to fail. She touched the hologram gently. Thank you, grandmother, for showing us the way. Outside, the sun was setting over Seoul. The city lights were coming on, just as they had for centuries. Above them, the stars waited, full of possibilities and mysteries and wonders yet to be discovered. And humanity, as always, was reaching for them. The galaxy had threatened sanctions. Humans had responded with silence. And in that silence, they had found their voice. The end.